Assalamu alaikum, family. You're tuned into the Sajdah channel. And I'm your host, Sajdah Wendy Muhammad. Got me a good cup of coffee this morning. Welcome to Sajdah's Monday morning motivation and meditation session. So be a friend and tell a friend, and we'll be right back. One commercial, one prayer, two commercials, and one prayer. And we're going to dive right into it. All right? Be right back.
O Allah, guide me among those whom Thou hast guided aright, and preserve me among those whom Thou hast preserved, and befriend me among those whom Thou hast befriended. Bless me in whatsoever Thou dost grant me, and deliver me from the evil of what Thou hast judged. Surely Thou judgest, and none can judge against Thee. And he whom Thou befriendest is not disgraced. Blessed art Thou, O Lord, and exalted be Thee above what they set up besides Thee. I bear witness, nothing deserves to be served besides Thee. And I bear witness that Muhammad is Thy servant and apostle. Amen.
Assalamu alaikum, family. We're back, and you're tuned into the Sajdah Monday morning motivation and meditation. And as you all know, we've been doing these on Monday, and they've been going pretty good. A lot of people have given me some great feedback and said that it's really helped them to start their week off right, which I am very, very grateful for. And so what I try to do is come up with a meditation statement, like a statement that we're meditating on. And today's meditation statement is this: belief waits for proof. Knowing becomes the proof. Belief waits for proof. Knowing becomes the proof. Now, let's talk about that a little bit before we start meditating on it. In our spiritual journey, there are levels. And oftentimes we address situations in very elementary levels. So we'll say, somebody we haven't seen in a while, we'll say, oh, they're a former believer. Or if somebody's constantly doing something that's a little crazy, we'll say, well, the problem is because they don't believe. And every time I've ever heard that, it's just something in my gut that just doesn't feel right about that. Or it just doesn't register. For one, who am I and who are we to say who believes and who doesn't? But Assalamu alaikum, Nubia Latifa. Blessed Monday. Yes, ma'am. Who are we to say? But then I said, you know what it is? It's knowing. There's a certainty and a manifestation level that comes from knowing that is more powerful than coming from believing. Because when you just believe, you're waiting on the proof. See, when you see certain behaviors out here, people who are competitive, who don't believe enough in themselves, literally. So, or let me say it this, they don't know themselves literally enough to create. So they run around and copy off of people and steal other people's concept. As soon as they see somebody else doing something, they say, oh, I'm going to do that too. I laugh because so much of what you see me do comes from something that has been created either from a download that I'm receiving or from something that was born out of an experience growing up. And then people will say, you know, they'll start doing it as if they learned it in a class. And there's been times where I've actually confronted people, say, hey, you know, did you see me doing that conceptually? And they'll say, oh, no, I learned this in a class. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what class you learned it in because I got it from my grandma and I changed the words around, you know. But it's okay because it tells us where you are. You're looking for proof, so you're trying to create the proof. And so because you're in that belief state and you're not in a knowing state, you're looking for some way to prove your belief. So when you see somebody else do something and they look pretty confident in it because they're probably in a knowing state, you go and you try to do it and you say, I'm going to do that because you think that's going to help you prove your belief. Or you become judgmental because you're looking for proof of your own belief. See, a lot of it is if you're in that belief state, you're looking for proof. But when you have access to divine intelligence, supreme wisdom, knowledge that changes lives, over time, you go into the knowledge state, the knowing state. Just like you pretty much know that your heart is going to beat until it doesn't. So you're not walking around saying, I believe my heart is going to beat. You're not even walking around, I believe my heart is going to beat. That don't even sound right. You know it. So when you know something, you don't even really address it. You move within that certainty and within that knowing, and it's really nothing to even talk about. There's not a lot of conversation about it because you know. You stepping up on a particular step, the only way you would say, I believe this step will hold me, is if you're looking for some proof that the step will really hold you. But if you believe the step is going to hold you, you're going to run up the steps without even thinking about it. You're going to run up those steps with a knowing that that step is going to hold you and that you're going to be able to get there. We do the same thing with breathing. Unless we are looking for proof that we can believe because we can breathe, because there's been some disruption, maybe we've been ill, maybe we've been sick, and we had a hard time breathing. But until we do that, we're all just sitting here breathing, knowing that we can breathe. And so we move within that knowing. So belief waits for proof. And if we're talking about building a new world and accessing the mind of God, we have to transition from belief to knowing. And here's the gag. You may not move into knowing about everything. There may be some things that you know. You know, like you know, like you know, and you move like you know it. And then there's some things that maybe you're still in the belief stage. And so what you want to do is pull yourself up out of that belief stage as soon as you possibly can through studying, through prayer, through putting yourself through certain exercises where you have to rely on that knowing and you got to move like you know. So you want to build up that muscle of knowing as quickly as you can, because knowing is the proof. Knowing and what you manifest at the knowing level gives everybody around you a testimony about what is possible if they know too. So when you see somebody achieve something, that is proof of what they know. So if you start deconstructing that, you got to say, okay, what did they know that allowed them to manifest at this level? Right? And because when you're at the belief level, you got to step in there between your manifestation. That's the reason why people can go to church, they can go to mosque, they can go to masjid, and they say, I believe, I believe, I believe. But oftentimes you don't see their condition change. It may change a little as they start gaining degrees of knowledge and degrees of certainty. But you don't see that massive level of manifestation. See, there are certain groups of people on this planet, certain races and certain classes of people within that race, is that they are so confident and so certain about their superiority that they move like that. And they may have less education than you and I. They may have less experience. They may not look as good. They may not be as smart, but their knowing gets them further sometimes than us, because we over here, we stuck in the belief state. We're looking for proof. We're looking for somebody to pat us on the back and say, yes, you're smart. Yes, you're good. Yes, you got it going on. Yes, I appreciate you. Here's a couple dollars. And we start to look at the more material things a person has as proof. And so we're always looking for that proof. But the evidence is the knowing. Knowing is the proof. So I want you to play around with this concept in your mind, because back in 2016, I wrote a book called The Mind of an Entrepreneur. And in between there, I wrote several ebooks. I wrote an ebook about President Barack Obama. I wrote an ebook about my father. I've written quite a few white papers about a number of different subjects that you can see posted out here on the internet. Economics, the art and science of business. I've done white papers on separation and different aspects of separation. I've done white papers on the discrimination and Islamophobia towards Black Muslims in Chicago. I've done a lot of white papers on it. But The Mind of an Entrepreneur, that book remains my bestseller of the collection. Because I think we all know that what we're dealing with today is a mind. So you got the mind of Yaqub. I'm not talking about mindset. You got the mind of Yaqub, the mind of pop culture versus the mind of God. And so we're dealing with a mind. And I heard one of the pioneer followers make a statement that when you're dealing with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, you're dealing with a mind. So whatever he said or told you that you were, if you moved from belief to knowing, then you became what he said that you were. And I know that to be true. I never met the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but I know that to be true with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And some of us, when he makes certain statements about us or tells us that we can achieve something, we are about the business of becoming, if we understand this concept, we're about the business of becoming into the knowing that that statement he said about us is true, not the belief. See, because if you're stuck in the belief, if he says, after you do such and such, you can have such and such, such and such. I'm trying not to be too specific here. But let's say he says that. Then if you are looking for proof that you are what he says you are, you will stay stuck at proof. But if you move into knowing and you start to position your mind like you know it, because you know he wouldn't have said it if you weren't that and you didn't have the ability to attain that. So if you move in that space of knowing, then you will get there and overcome that qualification even quicker. So it's the mind of God that we have to learn how to sync up with. We're dealing with a mind. So that is what we are going to motivate on today. And I wrote a couple of notes. I talked about you all who are culture vultures and copycats out there who are so insecure that all you do is copy somebody else's stuff. As soon as you see somebody else doing it, you don't even have enough self-pride to say, I like that. Let me tweak that a little bit. You just go and do whatever it is you see somebody else doing because you're looking for proof that you are who you say you are, or that you are who you think you are. You're insecure. Let me say something. Let me just say something on that before we go into meditation. If you see something that somebody else is doing, stop tapping into the mind of Yaqub and becoming a culture vulture and stealing their ideas and concepts just outright. See, that tells me what mind you're operating under and what tools you are using. You don't have the mind of God if you do that. So here's what you do. Let's say you get motivated. Let's say you say, man, I like the way Sister Sajdah sits in front of a table, during her podcast, or I love the new studio lounge she put together. And let's say you say, I think I'm inspired by that. Then be inspired by it, but don't go and try to recreate the exact same thing and then try to claim it as your own, because all you're doing is watering down yourself. You think people don't see that? Don't go lift somebody's words and their program and their content and take it verbatim and then say, oh no, this is what I do. When oftentimes it's something that's completely different from what you profess to do on a daily basis. Be mindful of that. If I see something that motivates me, you will not see me go and do the exact same thing that person is doing. I respect Allah and Allah's authenticity enough, and I respect Allah's desire to communicate and manifest himself in that person so much that unless he put that in me exactly, I am not going to try to prove who I am by jacking what that person is doing. If I'm motivated by it, you may see a version, but it'll be so different, and I'll go so into my creativity that you probably won't even notice that it was the same. There may be some basis of it, some points in it that's real. Okay, so keep that in mind. Belief waits for proof. Knowing becomes the proof. See, it's the process of becoming, just like Michelle Obama's book, Becoming. Knowing becomes the proof. Because when you know, you manifest on a whole nother level than if you believe. All right. So let's stop this, being the believer police, the hypocrite police, and this person, because they may be in that stage in their development. They just might. And here's the other thing. You can't say whether or not somebody believes or not, because based on their perspective and their level of knowledge and their level of information, they believe to the extent that they can at that moment. But you and I can't say that we're a stronger believer unless we are manifesting what we say we know. If we say we know something, then there's a manifestation that goes along. There's a result. There's a proof that shows what it is that we know. If you see me driving a car, that's because I know I can drive a car. And what's the evidence of that? You see me driving, you see me going places, you see me getting in the car, you see me steering, you see me turning on the signal. But you and I can't sit here and go, I believe more than that person, or because I do XYZ, I'm a bigger believer. Well, what are you manifesting? What do you know? Has your belief become a knowing? And can I look at you and say, I know that they believe? Can I anchor motivation? Can I anchor myself to your knowing and be motivated? So we got to be careful with this, because I believe it is hindering us, and it's limiting us, because we think that we have a list of criteria that we think makes us a believer. But we're not manifesting at the space that we need to be at in order to change the world, to make a difference, to resurrect lives, because we are not in the knowing space. Our knowing has not become proof. Belief waits for proof. Knowing becomes the proof. I'm going to say it one more time before we go into the meditation. Belief waits for proof. Knowing becomes the proof. Nubia Latifa said, I know I was supposed to get on here this morning. It's the explanation of when knowing becomes the truth versus belief waits for proof. That's exactly right. Belief is looking to prove. You believe, I believe that I can run this race. I believe I can lift those weights. What becomes the proof? The proof is when you do it and you say, oh, I know I can lift 220 pounds. Oh, I know I can run a 4-minute mile. I know. So the way we hack our mind is we go into knowing before we even do it. That's a whole nother concept. But let's stick with that one right there. Okay. So we're going to go into our meditation. That's what we're meditating on today. That's our meditative statement. I will put it up on the screen. You guys shouldn't be looking at it. You should have your eyes closed, but I know sometimes it's easier when we have the words up here. Okay. Belief waits for proof. Knowing becomes the proof. I got to say this. This is why we oftentimes feel tried, and we're going through so many trials and tribulations, oftentimes as believer. And we believe that we're always being tried. Really, what it is we're being pushed into knowing. We're being pushed out of belief where we're looking and waiting for proof. And sometimes we sit in belief so long, that's when we become culture vultures. We go into the devil's mind. We become copycats and thieves, and we start stealing from one another. We start doing all this negative stuff. Why? Because we're looking for proof. We're just at the belief stage. Now, at the beginning, that's okay. Nobody expects you to just go into knowing if you're just learning. But some of us have been around long enough that we should be in that knowing space about a number of things. And it's okay. I don't want you to feel bad, but if you find yourself struggling at a certain level, then start to dissect. Do I know or do I just believe? Am I fixing my mind with the energy of knowing? Because remember, knowing becomes the proof. And you got to remember the I am statement. I am. And whatever you put after I am is your identity. And if that's your identity, then you got to know it. And the knowing becomes the proof. And you're automatically going to get up out of that belief stage because you're going to tell your mind that you already got the proof. We'll cover this some more. We may have a special guest on Friday, but if we don't, we'll cover this some more a little bit later in the week. But okay, so let's start our meditation. Okay, we're going to do a soft inhale and exhale, just two soft ones. Y'all still need this up here? I'm going to take this off if y'all don't need it. All right. Let's go with two more soft, deep breaths. Relax your head. Relax your scalp. Relax your forehead. And one more deep breath and just breathe into the head, scalp, and forehead. Now we're going to close our eyes. And we're going to take 3 deep breaths. And we're going to breathe like we're breathing through our mouth and out through our nose. But instead of opening our mouth, we're going to have our mouth closed. And it's going to sound something like this. And you're going to try to take in as much air as you possibly can, almost to the point where you're choking yourself, because you want that breath to reset you, almost like you're about to choke. Take it in. And one more. And remember, belief waits for proof. Knowing is the proof. And sit with that. And just breathe. Relax your forehead. Relax your eyes. Stop holding your nose and mouth so tight. Relax that jawline. Belief waits for proof. Knowing is the proof. And these breaths that we're taking them like this because we know. And I want you to be pleasant and happy because now you know that belief waits for proof. Knowing is the proof. Relax your throat. You may feel your breath becoming a little bit rough and uneven, like waves in water, because your brain is not concentrating on the breath, it's concentrating on the statement. So you're going to toggle back and forth between focusing on the breath, feeling the mind of God in your breath, letting it fill your chest. When you start to feel that level of comfort, we're going to inject that belief is waiting for proof. Knowing is proof. It's a little neuro-linguistic programming that we're using. And just sit with the statement. Hear yourself saying it in your inner mind. Belief waits for proof. Knowing is the proof. And as we start to prepare for our day, I want you to think about what it will be like just walking with certainty, knowing what you know, what you know, what you know, and not beating yourself up. If you're still looking for proof for certain things in your life, certain things within your faith, it's okay. Acknowledge that and ask for the knowing. Ask and you shall receive. Belief waits for proof. Knowing is the proof. It's all about perspective. It's all about mind. Back in the day, our family would always say things like, "He don't believe fat meat is greasy." Well, how do you and I know that fat meat is greasy? Because we done had some of that greasy fat meat in our mouth, and now we know. But let's say we had not had it in our mouth. We would just tell ourselves that we know. And then our brain will start looking for the proof. And then our knowing becomes the proof. Belief waits for proof. Knowing is the proof. All right. I'm going to take 3 of those deep breaths. Let's take the first one. And the second one. And one more. Now, before we open our eyes, let's just breathe gently. Come back to ourselves. Many of us learned a new concept today. And we're going to walk away from this session with a knowing. So with that, I want you to gently open your eyes. And I want to thank you all for joining us this morning. Remember, we are dealing with the mind of God. It's the mind. So be very mindful of the mind that you submit to. Be mindful of conversations. Be mindful of movies. Be mindful of what you're watching. Don't sit down for 2-3 hours unraveling all your mental and spiritual work by watching some kind of bad demonic low vibrational show. We will be the winners in the end. And we will be the winners using the divine intelligence, the DI, that we all now have at our disposal. That supreme wisdom is a mind. It's an aspect of a mind. We'll talk a little bit more about this later this week during our coffee talks. And until then, may Allah bless you with more goodness than you've ever received or imagined. Let me say it one more time. May you be blessed with more goodness than you've ever received or imagined. Go out and have a good day. Do something good for somebody today and love on somebody today. And if you enjoy this type of content, support it. And inshallah, we'll see you all later this week.